Alrighty, guys. So I've got my notes pulled up. I'm gonna try to get a Ruy Lopez game in here to uh, 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 work on my learning. Make sure that I'm doing my studying correctly. See if we can get a game. All right, excellent. I'm hoping to see a knight move. And I knight move. All right. So now, if that bishop comes to here, I can use my training. And it doesn't. All right. So that's fine. So one of the things in the Ruy Lopez is eventually this knight is going to come. See, this knight is going to come knight f6 here anyway. So let's go ahead and make that move. That still leaves in reserve in case my opponent were to go here. Kind of giving us the Berlin defense-ish. I'm not sure what this move does. I mean, I guess it gives room for the queen out somewhere, but I'm not 100% certain. Okay, so he's prepping this kind of move. So this is actually reminding me of the Italian game, the Gioco Piano, when the bishop is sitting here. This is what the pawns would look like in that game. When that happens, the goal here is to get castled early. So I'm going to do the same thing. These are just normal, in regardless of the lines that are being used, these are normal developing principled moves, right? Getting my pieces developed, knights before bishops. We're controlling the center. This is fine. It is technically a pin for now, so I can't defend that pawn. I mean, I can't attack that pawn, but this guy's not doing double duty anywhere. And if I have to take back, I can take back that way. So I'm not really that concerned right now. If he takes here, I just take back this way and I don't mess up my pawn structure. Next move for me is probably going to be something like that to get my light square bishop out. Or maybe we can try a fianchetto. You know, we've been talking about fianchettoing. Maybe we can try that, see what that's like. Get a little experience on that side. Fianchetto my light square bishop would mean that when my opponent castles, that would give me a little bit of pressure on this diagonal already. So that's something to consider. All right, let's take a look at this here real quick. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders in that square. My opponent has 1, 2, 3. So I can capture, right? Hopefully I didn't miss anything. I'm going to try to keep the bishops on the board a little bit longer. I think my opponent is now realizing that there was a slight miscalculation there. So I've won a pawn in this exchange so far. These guys are a little out there, so I'd like to do something to bring them home. And I think I'm going to do this, actually. Make another trade, but it comes with, forces my opponent to respond. But it could come with this same thing. What if I were to go here? That just gives up material. Is there anything I can do at this point in time? He takes. I don't really want to park my bishop back here. So maybe we leave this alone for now. And what if we do this, right? That defends this guy. Gets my light square bishop out. Puts pressure here. Let's do that. Notice my opponent can't get the knight there, so there's really not any dangers along this diagonal. Now, if he puts his queen here, that changes the story a little bit. But I still have, okay. Does that do anything? Not yet. Well, it does defend this pawn here. But if we get a rook over here, Actually, I'll probably take this rook. If we get a rook over here, maybe we can start to threaten some discoveries. Make some exchanges here, maybe. Yeah, he's getting a defender there, an extra defender there. Okay. Hmm. I'm just doing some thinking here. My opponent does not have a dark square bishop, so I'm not too concerned about dark squares here. I am concerned about the knights, and I want... My opponent could have castled. I wonder why he didn't. Is he looking to keep this rook down this file? So I want to be cautious of this then. If my opponent starts pushing this pawn to make sure I blockade it and don't... Hmm. So I'm thinking I could throw a pawn away. I'm up a pawn, so I could give back that pawn. Not certain. Oh, he's looking. No, I don't know what he's looking to do. But either way, I'm going to make this exchange. Right? I'm still up material, so I'm happy to make exchanges. He's going to park that guy right there. So now, oops. So now, can't do anything there. Hmm. I mean, what's wrong with that? Defended. Right? What's wrong with that? Hmm. All my pieces are defended, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable. I don't have any back rank issues. My queen is a little weirdly placed. I could swing it out there, maybe pick up another pawn, and threaten a rook at the same time. I'm not really threatening any kind of mate possibilities, but there's some pressure there. See, that is defended though, so I'm not that concerned. He just dropped a queen. Is he gonna be really mad that he just dropped a queen? Yeah. He's not gonna be happy with himself that he dropped that queen. And like I said, that's defended, so I don't see any concerns there. So I am up significant material at this point in time. Dropping a queen is pretty brutal. And he just dropped another piece. So yeah. GG, well played. Yeah, so this is what happens. When we make mistakes, and we all do. I mean, you guys have seen how many mistakes I've made. The game that I was trying to record before this, I made some pretty bad mistakes. And I was hoping to try to get a Ruy Lopez there, and it did not develop that way. So, sorry, the dog is back here and she's messing with my legs. I was trying to get a Ruy Lopez there, and it didn't go that way. It ended up going down a French variation, and I'm not familiar at all with the French, and I was just throwing pieces away, trying to figure out what my opponent was doing. My opponent was playing very fast and very aggressive, and I did not know how to react. But looking for a Ruy Lopez here, it did not develop that way. This is the Ponzani opening. Ponzani opening. I'm not familiar with it at all. So I just made standard principled moves. And this is one of the things I want to talk about. Like, I know that right now I am trying to study like certain lines, right? I'm trying to study like the Ruy Lopez, for instance. I'm trying to learn how these games go, but really, you don't have to know any of that stuff, right? None of us really have to know those kind of openings. They are helpful for when you're playing faster chess, when you don't have time to sit and think and do the calculations in your head of what happens if I move this piece here and what's my opponent's best responses to here and here and here. So when you're playing faster games, you already know the best move, right? You know that my opponent has played this move, and after countless years of study, it has been proven that this series of responses is the best series of responses. So if those are the air quote best moves, then I'm just going to make those best moves. So studying lines like this, like the Ruy Lopez, is not going to inherently make us better at chess. But I am using it from a perspective of I am learning the principles of chess and trying to make principled moves and not drop pieces, right? But and so I'm using the knowledge base that the experts have given us, right? All these countless of games that have been played at the highest of levels. I'm just trying to use that to um, better improve my understanding of the principles and put those principles into practice and see how they develop from that perspective. I'm kind of rambling a little bit here, but the point is we don't have to learn lines. We just have to know principles, and studying a few little gotcha tactics here and there is going to make us better at chess. So even though my opponent is playing a line that I'm not familiar with, I can still play really good chess just by knowing the principles. Develop my pieces, control the center, knights before bishops, connect my rooks, don't make too many pawn moves, don't keep moving the same piece around over and over and over again. Stick to these principles and we can have good chess. So yes, I was looking for a certain setup so that I could look at my notes whenever I'm in doubt and just follow what the experts say. But I can just do basic principle chess moves, get my bishop outside of my pawn chain, and move from there. Before I close this door on this chain, my bishop is now out. So basic standard principled moves. Um, I I talk about tempo sometimes too. Tempo is right. There's a limited number of moves. This entire chess game was 17 moves before my opponent resigned. So my opponent made his 17th move, and that was it. So there you have a limited number of moves. Make each one of them count. This opening, this move here, probably is for a certain reason. There's a certain reason why that pawn is pushed. And then by moving this pawn here, I'm sure there is a reason for it. Yeah, the database says more people play this move, and that move makes a little bit more sense because it is backed up by another pawn, right? So you have pushing this pawn, spending a turn to push this pawn. What does it achieve? Well, if we are preparing this square to put another pawn on it, which is a principal move of controlling the center, then that makes sense. But pushing this pawn just to push this pawn here doesn't make as much sense. Notice there's nothing supporting it. And this guy's really not... I mean, this guy is controlling this square, but there's nothing in that square. You had an opportunity to put that pawn there. And if the pawn move here is just to give room for your bishop, then why move this pawn to begin with? Let's change the move order. Let's put that one there first, then get our bishop out, and then if we want to make some changes to our pawn structure, then we can move. So I don't know. I'm not saying this guy, my opponent, I'm not saying that he or she is playing incorrectly, but the way this game turned out, it seemed like this was a lost move. This was basically out of my opponent's 17 moves, this one did nothing. So that's what I would call tempo. So my opponent spent tempo and gained nothing, and I use that tempo to develop a piece. Notice too, if my opponent had played this here, let's say he played this, my bishop is not going here, my bishop is not going here, my bishop's not going here. It would severely limit the scope of my dark square bishop. So this seems like it would be fine. Like it would be fine to be played, and that tempo move would have gained him something. It would have gained the limit, or gained reducing in power of my dark square bishop. So if I've harped on that a lot, it's just I'm trying to learn lessons from every game I play, and this is one that I can learn from. This was a tempo move that did nothing. So my opponent spent tempo and gained nothing. I still have a nice strong bishop here. I can even tuck it away if I need to. It can become part of the pawn chain if I have to. I'd rather not, but I can keep it on this decent diagonal protected. This is a fine move, right? This is a normal move. Continue to make normal principal moves. This is also a fine move, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And on these, I believe this is a personal choice. Yeah. Well, the engine is finding new lines, but I would argue this is a personal choice, whether you want to keep the bishop on the board or you want to trade it away for this knight. You've heard my conversations about when I want to make this trade versus when I don't. Sometimes I want to make this trade in order to ruin my opponent's pawn structure. In this particular case, I happen to have a defender that doesn't ruin my pawn structure, so I'm okay with this trade. It removes my opponent's strong bishop from the game as well, so I'm happy with it. But I think this is just personal choice, whichever way you want to do. In your games, whenever you play your games, you get to decide, do I keep my bishop on the board or do I make the exchange early? I don't have wisdom to tell you which one you want to do. My preference, well, my previous preference was to make the trade just because I want to remove my opponent's knights because I'm not seeing them very well. But my new trying to learn kind of better habits from the experts, many experts say a bishop pair is really strong. So if I'm at a 50-50 coin flip, I'm going to try to default to keeping my bishops on the board. So if I were the white player in this case, and I don't have a good reason to make the exchange, I'm going to keep my bishops on the board. So I'm not going to exchange, and I'm going to keep the bishops. So if I were playing the white's position, I would not exchange, only because I'm trying to keep my bishops on the board. But you in your games, you do whatever you want. That to me, I don't see it being critical one way or the other. And now here's another tempo move. So my opponent now makes this pawn move. So we go back to tempo. He spent a tempo to push this pawn, which really did nothing at the time. He spent a tempo to push the pawn here to free up his dark square bishop. And then he spent another tempo to push his pawn here. So this pawn move was weakened because it didn't get the support that it deserved. And then this pawn move was weakened because he turned around and just moved it again. So this was 3 moves that could have been 2. And really, this move is I would only say, considered a half a move because it didn't do what it could have done at the time. So changing the move order, if we go all the way back here, changing the move order for my opponent, I would have moved that, and then I would have moved that. What did I do after the fact? Yeah, because I moved my bishop, and now my bishop can't go to where I want it to, so I would have had to park it somewhere different. You can still keep the tension on the board and make the same move you wanted to make, right? But now these pawns had a purpose, right? These pawns forced my game to be different, forced my dark square bishop now off onto this diagonal instead of being on this diagonal. Is there a big difference to that? Well, you tell me. This bishop now does not have control over the king's back rank. This bishop is on a weaker diagonal because it's not really influencing any of my opponent's pieces. And the room that it can go to, well, these 2 squares are already taken over by this knight. So this bishop becomes significantly weaker. in this board structure, if my opponent had simply made this particular pawn move, keeping everything else the same, this would have been a much different game. The rest of this kind of just went, yeah, this was, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4 attackers to 1, 2, 3 defenders. This move, now it's too little too late and it actually loses material. So black is up a pawn here. And yeah, this is I don't know what this move was for. This move is not really doing anything yet. If we look at the move order, like I said that felt like an Italian game. The move order said that bishop belongs on b4, or c4, excuse me. But that should have happened much earlier. Now, there's nothing to support it. There's nothing backing it up. And you've kind of already ruined your pawns in the center of the board. So, I did not capitalize. Yeah, so I was talking about this, maybe making this move, forcing my opponent. So I was talking about this, and the engine says that yes, that was indeed a good move to make. But I was concerned about this, because then, oh yeah, because then I can move my queen out of the way with tempo. So just moving my queen out of the way is okay. Like if I just move, no, not there, whoops. If I just move it out of the way, it's not the end of the world. But if I move it with tempo, right, move it and do something else at the same time. All right, so I made a slight, I mean, it's not an error, but the engine says this was a much significantly better line than the conservative line I played. This was a good move, I thought. Adding extra protection on this pawn. He probably could have just parked it there to begin with, right? Yeah, see, this is another one. It's blocked in here. If this pawn had been up here to begin with, then he could have moved that bishop behind there in one shot. So he lost the tempo here, and then moves it again. Oops, moves it again, and then moves it right back. So this bishop never left these 4 squares and just, you know, it didn't really do a lot of things. So I don't want it to sound like I'm beating up my opponent. I'm just stating that looking at the game after the fact, this game could have been a little bit closer. And really what I'm talking about is tempo, right? And when I say tempo, I'm meaning the what you're doing with your moves. So when I'm making moves, I'm trying to do 2 things at once. I'm trying to move with a purpose and not just move. In this particular case, my opponent has now spent 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns to move his bishop, and that bishop really didn't do anything during that walk. So out of the 17 turns, my opponent lost 1 on these funky pawn moves, lost 2 going to that. So I had 17 turns, my opponent only had 14 turns. So you can see how the tempo imbalance has some impact. So if we're looking to get slightly better, like if I'm looking to make the leap from my around 1300 to kind of get out of this little lump and move up to, like, say, 1400, I need to learn how to make these moves work for me and not waste tempo. You know, if I learn to spend my tempo more effectively, then I'm improving, right? If I learn to not drop pieces, then I'm improving. If I learn to take advantage of small little things, then those little things can build into big advantages. Yeah, so I was trying to get something here along these two files. These are what are known as semi-open. There's only 1 pawn on them. They're not fully open because there's like, yeah, these are all semi-open. But semi-open files lead to open files. So yeah, my engine is saying it wants me to line up here, which makes a ton of sense. And this is a principle that I should have spotted a long time ago. A semi-open file in front of my opponent's king. Yeah, that's Yeah, especially at this point where my opponent has two pieces in the way of their queen. I'm not going to get to their queen. My opponent had the right to castle, so maybe this is a player who is not familiar with castling rules, is not familiar with the, the website and how to actually make the castling move. But like castling seems to me significantly better than just moving, right? What was the purpose of this move? What was the goal for it? Was it to get the king out of this? Well, then I can do two things at once. I can get my king out and I can get my rook out. Whereas doing this just blocks my rook. And now the only way for my rook to get involved in the game, the only way is I have to move these pawns. And I have to move them enough to give my rook room to get out, right? I can't just move these guys one up because then my rook is blocked over here. So I have to make a full move just to get my rook out. So whereas we've seen the power of rooks along the back row. We have seen that how powerful that those two connected rooks along the back row can be as a defensive measure. So yeah, this should have just been a castle. I don't see why it shouldn't have been. There are many reasons why castling is not always the best, right? There are many times when, you know, using these rooks along the edge of the board can be extreme. Like I'm over here castled. If I lose this pawn, my opponent has free reign to drive his rook all the way down. Now, it would require getting his pawn out of the way, but, you know, that's an option. But, yeah. Yeah, this is a move order, one move too late. I probably should have done that first, but oh well. And then this. What is the purpose of this move? Is it to go after this pawn? Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I could see that, going after the pawn. But that's a risky play for your queen. And I know I was talking about doing the same thing, but I don't know, like what do you do now? Yeah, and see if I had done my move order different, right? Back here, if I had done this one first, and then my opponent made this move, well, no, I probably still would have done that. And then I would not have want to go back. Okay. Or, you know what I could even do to defend? Hang on. I could even, let me go back here. So if my opponent, I could even do that. Defends his pawn. Well, it does give up a pawn. Yeah, not 100% clear. Yeah, it gives up a pawn. Yeah, it does. Okay, it gives up a pawn. So that would not have been a good defense. Notice my thought process was this. But anyway, that's beside the point. That doesn't matter. So maybe you know, at the time I thought this was a weird move. I didn't know what he was doing, but he is attacking a pawn. So we'll leave it at that. It was at this point in time that I decided to go ahead and make this exchange, get that knight off the board. Engine wants me to make that trade. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, no. Okay, not that exchange. Yeah, I didn't think so. But the engine is saying go ahead and give up my bishop. I don't get it. 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 All right, that's fine. Make the exchange. Put pressure on the queen, and then yeah, my opponent just flubbed a queen. And then this is what we do when we make a mistake. Making one mistake is not the end of the world. All right, dropping your queen sucks, and that's pretty bad. And immediately, when I do something stupid like that, immediately I berate myself. You guys have heard it, and I get very frustrated. But one mistake can lead to other mistakes very quickly, and that's very common, and that's one of the things that we look to avoid. In the theater, right? In plays, in movies, in music, when you're doing live performances, if you make a mistake, just keep going. How you respond to a mistake says more about your preparedness than stopping the whole show just to talk about your mistake. So most people won't even know that you made a mistake until you make a big deal out of it, or you let that mistake carry over to incurring other mistakes. And this is one such case where a mistake led to more mistakes. And my opponent, as soon as he played it, realized it. I mean, yeah, the engine says even that, because what are you going to do? I guess you can get the with check. What are you going to do? Give up your rook, I guess? Yeah, I don't know. Either way, none of that matters. The point of this whole of recording this whole game was I was looking for a certain line because I've been studying these lines, right? Like I've been talking about looking for the Ruy Lopez. I didn't get that line. But the purpose of studying these lines is not to memorize the lines, but it is to, for me anyway, it's for me to understand how the principles of chess play into these games. If I focus on the principles and I follow these kind of tenets of control the center, develop pieces, move with a purpose, don't remove pieces all over the place, connect your rooks along the back row. As long as I play that way, I can play pretty good chess, pretty comfortably. I can play chess. And when I'm faced with a situation that I've never seen before, which almost every single game in chess is probably going to develop into a brand new game at some point in time that no one else has ever played. There's mathematically too many possibilities to always end up in the same situation. So memorizing a bunch of lines is not going to make me better at chess. It's like putting in golf, right? Like, it doesn't matter how far you can drive the ball. If you can't putt, then you can't score well. Chess principles is, if all else fails, your chess principles are going to be what redeems you. So learn the principles, stick with it. Learn how tempo can impact my games. Learn how my pieces can impact the game, and don't overcommit. Instead, I need to look at over defending and making sure I don't drop pieces because I'm aggressively throwing material down the board. All right, so this was a lot of rambling, but the whole point of it is just to kind of talk about how I can get better at my games, and maybe you guys can learn a little bit on your games too. All right, have fun, guys.